Plants can move, a discovery made many years ago. But recent studies prove that they can also smell, touch, taste, and react to various stimuli. They also have fine hearing, memory, and can perceive shapes. Plants interact with the outside world far more than once believed. We knew they were sensitive to temperature, sunshine, and humidity. Today's research proves that plants have a number of other surprising senses, which leads us to look at them from a new perspective. Seen up close, and even very, very close, nature takes on a whole other dimension. Our eyes delight in the finesse of a branch. We marvel at the delicate nature of a flower. Beneath trees, we are prone to dream. If we could look much closer and plunge into the intimacy of plant life, we would discover a disturbing yet stunning complexity. This green chaos, covered with what looks like the eyes of snails, is in reality the surface of the leaf of an ordinary tree, enlarged hundreds of times through digital 3D microscopes. Today, scientific imagery enables us to see plants like never before, and we find, in awe, that the world of plants remains largely a mystery to us. Humans have several common points with plants. They have a vascular system similar to our veins and arteries, which ensures fluid circulation. Plants have an electric network resembling our nerves, through which information travels. Plants secrete hormones, and other points of similarity could be revealed. On the other hand, without a heart or brain, absolutely essential for us, plants throughout their evolution have developed some extremely original solutions for survival, solutions we could learn from. Stefano Mancuso, a professor at the University of Florence in Italy, founded over 10 years ago the first international laboratory of vegetal neurobiology, which studies the interactions between plants and their environment.
Plants are able to sense the environment in an exquisite way. They are much more sensitive than animals, and they need to be more sensitive because they cannot run away from the danger.
Plants are rooted to the ground. This forced sedentary nature has steered their sensorial organization to become accurate and highly efficient.
Sensitivity is not something that is linked to a brain. The brain in itself, it's a stupid organ. It's just an amount of cells that we have here and every animals have. There is nothing mysterious or supernatural about the cells of our brains. They are just a specific kind of cells called neurons. But you don't need neurons to make this stuff. You can have also other kind of cells having the same function. So it means transmitting signals from one cell to the other.
Humans must react instantly to their environment, especially when confronted with danger. Transmission of nerve impulses spread throughout our nervous system at a speed of 100 meters a second. Do plants need such rapid connections? To calculate the speed of electric signals in a plant, Bruno Moulier and his team from the French National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and the Environment, INRAE, is placing electrodes on the stem of a shrub.
The flexion here has triggered an electric current which spreads throughout the plant, but weakens at roughly 20 centimeters. When the plant receives a gust of wind or an insect bite, there are two signals that spread throughout the plant, an electric signal over some dozens of centimeters, and a hydraulic signal that can even travel to the roots.
The conduction speed of the electric impulse, seen in this image highly accelerated, is only 6 to 8 centimeters per minute. This slower conduction speed is logical with the sedentary life of plants. To create the organic matter required for growth, a plant needs light, provided by the sun, carbon dioxide, present in the atmosphere, and water. Light is absorbed through chlorophyll, the tiny round globes contained in plant cells. Thanks to chlorophyll, light, water, and carbon dioxide are transformed into sugars, which the plant feeds on. This process, known as photosynthesis, releases oxygen into the Earth's atmosphere and provides all the organic matter and the energy necessary for life on Earth. The procedure seems simple, but in everyday life, plants are regularly confronted with vital problems. Water is capricious, and plants don't want too much or too little, and it must fall at the right time. Roots seize the water in the soil through a large number of little hairs. Under lack of water, roots are the first to perceive the threat and action the close of the stomata. Stomata are little mouth-like pores spread over the leaves. It is through these that the plant breathes and releases the water vapor produced by photosynthesis. When roots send the signal, lack of water, the stomata pores shrink. The plant captures less carbon dioxide and reduces growth. Daniel Shamovitz, a botanical genetics scientist, discovered a gene in the hairs of plants that is similar to those responsible for the vibrating hairs in the inner ear of humans.
From a genetic point of view, plants have the same genes that are needed for hearing that animals have. This gene in animals is a gene which enables the hairs of our inner ears to be formed, and these are the hairs that vibrate in sound waves. These are genes that are needed for us to hear. Plants have essentially the same genes, which might lead us to think that plants hear the same way. But when we look more in depth of what these genes do, they're necessary for forming of hairs at the tips of roots. But these hairs apparently are not listening, but they're necessary for the roots to absorb water. So while the genes cause the same structures to be formed, hairs, in humans it's needed for hearing, and in plants it's needed for drinking.
This unexpected proximity fascinates and drives Stefano Mancuso.
We are quite sure that plants are able to use the information coming from the sounds in the soil, for example, to detect the quality of the soils, the amount of water in the soils, the presence of obstacles in the soil. So they are in some way using information coming from sounds to have an idea of the space around them. So just put a loudspeaker close to these roots, and you will see that if the frequencies are in the range between 100 to 1000 hertz, the roots will turn toward the source of the frequency. If the frequencies are higher than 5000, the roots will grow against the source of the sound.
The plant Desmodium gyrans was once thought to dance to music. Today's fact, it moves its leaves towards the zone that gets the most light. Some may say that plants do better and grow quicker when their favorite music is played.
What is important for plants is not the music, but are the frequencies. We found that there are a range of frequencies in the low part of the spectrum. between 100 and 1,000 hertz, there are many frequencies that we could say plants like. They are completely insensitive to the quality of this classical rock, blues, and so on of the music. But they are able to detect specific frequencies and to react to these frequencies accordingly.
If there is one sound which humans find disturbing, it's the whining of a mosquito in the dark. Could plants be aware of the buzzing of insects? In Israel and in the global scientific community, the work of Lilac Hadney is making a buzz. Her research backs up the idea that plants identify the sounds made by pollinators and take advantage of this. Flowers produce nectar with the sole aim of attracting pollinators that feed on the sugars it contains. By harvesting the nectar, pollinators bring pollen from other flowers, and this pollen fertilizes the flower they visit. Researcher at the University of Tel Aviv, she has recorded the buzzing of bees as they sip nectar. She plays back the buzz through a loudspeaker held above a flower bed of primroses. Lilac and one of her teammates then harvest the nectar secreted by the flowers and measure sugar levels with an analyzer.
Much sweeter nectar this time. It's estimated up to 30% of the energy of the plant is wasted on nectar. So to keep nectar high in all time is a very expensive process, and also that attracts all sorts of robbers, bacteria, fungi, birds. If you can have nectar low when pollinators are not around, and increasing sugar concentration only in times where pollinators are around, that could save the plant a lot of energy.
While the forms and shapes of flowers are diverse, many are concave, shaped like a bowl or a bell.
If we look at this flower, it has this bowl shape, a bit like a small satellite dish. So we suggest that the flower is the external ear of the plant, an ear that has evolved to respond specifically to the sounds of the pollinators of this very plant, bees or moths. This flower vibrates in response to the sound of bees, but if we remove some of the petals, this remaining petal would not be able to respond so much to the sounds.
Lilac picks a few primroses to take back to her laboratory. She wants to check if the petals are receiving the sound of bee flight. She observes them under a high-resolution optical microscope. When she plays the recordings of bees buzzing along with other pollinators, a laser beam measures the vibration of the petals to establish a scale of the flower's reactions.
With the laser vibrometer, we were able to detect tiny vibrations in response to sound. And we saw that indeed the flower vibrates in response to bee sound, but not in response to much higher sounds, like bat sounds.
Sounds made by other animals bring no reaction from the flower. But the buzzing of a bee leads the flower to produce a sweeter nectar.
If plants hear, if plants sense sound waves, they do it in a completely different way. They didn't say, oh, what should we listen to today? But it did develop the ability to respond to the sound of a pollinator, and then to differentiate between a pollinator and a non-pollinator. And that makes sense also, because if you're responding to every wavelength, then you're just, you're wasting energy in making nectar for someone who will never drink it.
We are still thinking of the possibility of plant communication after hearing the bee sound. For example, within the same bush of the evening primrose, there is one flower exposed directly to the bee. But is the signal transmitted to other flowers on the same plant? This is something we intend to study.
Could The Flight of the Bumblebee by Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov have been composed for the well-being of his plants? If plants can sense specific sounds for their own benefit, can they emit sounds? Scientists have heard, over the years, strange clicking sounds in plant stems. They wondered how these sounds were produced. Many believed that the clicks came from the bursting of bubbles of air closed up in the vascular system within plant stems. At Tel Aviv University, Lilac and her team have shown that the clicks made by the plants are of very high frequencies and are like bursting popcorn. To avoid hearing any other interfering sounds, the team has installed ultra-sensitive microphones 10 centimeters away from the test plants.
It actually worked. Within a few hours, we discovered that plants indeed emit sounds, brief ultrasonic clicks, high above human hearing ability. Moreover, these sounds contained information about the stress of the plant.
Tomato plants and vines in distress emit sounds in frequencies between 20 to 100 kilohertz, which is beyond human hearing, limited to 16 kilohertz. The experiment continued in the acoustic chambers of the university's soundproof bunker. Scientists stressed the plants by cutting them, pinching them, or depriving them of water.
You see, this is a strong sound. This drying plant is actually emitting a lot of sounds and is in a significant stress. In our experiment, they peaked about the 5th day without water, and then the sounds start declining until a very dry plant does not emit much sound. We cannot say yet if plants speak in the sense of emit sounds for communication purposes that are identified by someone else in a constructive way.
Plants increase the number and intensity of sounds produced as stress levels increase, and long before they are visually dehydrated. Lilac and her team are pursuing their research. If plants emit sound signals that have a meaning, especially at the start of a drought, this information could help farmers. In humans, some body odors attract mosquitoes, while other body odors do not. Is there any similarity in the green kingdom? Each plant species has its own olfactory signature, which comes from the complex structure of the fragrant compounds it releases. Odoriferous capsules and bulbs are very common on the leaves of tomatoes or cannabis. These capsules release a strong scent, which is easily identifiable. The strong smell of lavender is produced by large pockets that burst upon contact. Professor Consuelo de Moraes from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich has spent many years studying plant odors and how they detect odors. Odors are measured under these glass domes where tomato plants are infested by a strange vampire plant.
Cascura is a parasitic plant, so it needs a host to survive. So it's a true parasite. It doesn't have roots. It doesn't do photosynthesis. So in order to survive, it has to attach to a host. It has to find that host. And the question is, how do they find the host plant? And what we discovered was that they actually smell the host plant.
When it sprouts, the cuscuta seed has little time to find a host to which it can cling and live upon. One might think that it becomes a parasite on the first plant within reach, but that's not the case. It makes a choice. These very high-speed images show how the cuscuta searches.
I think they're smelling the tomato plants as this is something that I can survive on.
They really can sniff.
How do the cuscuta find the tomato plants?
Cascura germinates, it comes out of the ground, and then they start growing towards the tomato plant. And our hypothesis is that the perception of the smell is at the tip of the vine. We now know that plants can perceive smells, but we don't know yet is how they do that. What are the mechanisms of this nose perception?
Based on the odors of different plants, the cuscuta select those which are strong enough to support its grasp.
One thing that we were amazed to see is that the cuscuta have this ability also to perceive, a healthy plant versus a sick plant. They have, in my view, an incredible sense.
This plant is unhealthy, and the cuscuta turns away. Once the prey has been selected, the cuscuta wrap around it and suck its sap, leaving just enough to keep it alive. Once the cuscuta have flowered and produced their seeds, ensuring reproduction, they exhaust their prey and die with it. If plants can smell each other, some can also smell pest insects.
One of our recent discoveries is that actually plants can also perceive insect pheromones. So we showed that these Arte flies produce pheromones that attract the females, and the plants, these plants that they have co-evolved with, these gonurod plants, can perceive these pheromones by smelling this specific compound that the flies are producing. This pheromone indicates an upcoming threat for the plants.
When it has smelled the odor of the Arte parasite fly, the plant defends itself. For example, it changes its time of flowering. Discovering that plants can perceive the smell of some insects opens a wide field of research, including applications towards more ecological farming. If water is vital for plants, light is just as important.
What is light for a plant? But it's its energy to make food through photosynthesis. A plant has to know where the sunlight is so that it could do photosynthesis in order to make its sugars, in order to have energy. And so therefore it has to be exquisitely sensitive to where the sun is.
Plants do not see light with a specific organ like the eye, which can perceive a limited number of colors and has a reduced angle of view. Plants see the light with each of their cells. They do not see images, but translate light signals into actions: germination, growth, flowering.
Compared to plants, humans are visually impaired. While we can see the colors of a rainbow, that's the whole spectrum we see, from blue all the way through to red, plants respond to all of the visual light that we see, but they also perceive, sense, and respond to light waves that we're blind to, such as UV light or far red light.
Hydroponic farms light their plantations with ultraviolet and red lights, which favor photosynthesis. These plants grow to the maximum of their possibilities all year round. At the INRAE of Lusignan in France, Elsbieta Frack is studying how plants communicate through light signals. Exposure to colored filters reveals that plants absorb blue, use red for photosynthesis, reflect green, and communicate in infrared. To display this communication, Elsbieta places a control plant on a mobile stand that moves on a rail. A light source and an optical sensor are placed behind the plant. The optical sensor detects the movement of the plant due to the variation in light quality that is sent when it moves on the rail. Similar to the way an infrared camera records the signal when an animal passes in front of it.
When I approach this plant here, you can see that the intensity of the signals exchanged, increases. And it's through this that the plant locates itself in space. It knows if it's surrounded by neighbors or not. Between 400 and 700 nanometers are used by the plant for photosynthesis, producing sugars for food. Beyond that, between 700 and 800 nanometers, is what is called near-infrared. We cannot see such wavelengths, but plants can, and they absolutely need them to communicate. Without these wavelengths, they would be blind. Plants exchange signals between each other through light, especially in the near-infrared. Today, we are trying to understand this under natural conditions, almost real-life conditions, how the plant community can influence the growth of one plant. And to do this, we need to reproduce the experience by reproducing the 360-degree vision of a plant.
Elżbieta has installed masts equipped with high-precision optical sensors. Each sensor pivots 360 degrees around the center of young plants of the same species, more or less close to each other. The sensor measures the signals exchanged by the plants in the near-infrared, wavelengths that neighboring plants reflect. The signals reveal that each plant locates its neighbors through these emissions and adapts its growth as a consequence, so as not to waste energy.
When the plants are extremely close to one another, the signals are strong, and in this case, they really do inform the plant. Our first results show that the plant starts to reduce the number of branches.
Elżbieta Frack is at the forefront of research which is revolutionizing our knowledge of plants. In the near future, farmers could use mathematical models to predict the interaction of plants between each other, with plants of different species, or with natural elements such as wind. If we are rarely exposed to wind in our daily lives, wind is part of the natural environment of plants. At the Clermont-Ferrand INRAE in France, Bruno Moulier and his team are studying their reactions to all kinds of wind, from a caressing breeze to the violent shocks caused by storms.
In this experiment, we exposed the plant to various sequences of gusts of wind. After successive blasts, the electric response measured starts to diminish, which means the plant gets used to it and replies less to the same gust of wind. We're studying how the plant memorizes, and we discovered that the plant can remember for over a week. Can you see if it's in focus? Ready?
The researcher repeats the experiment under natural conditions. He restrains several trees with straps and cables. He installs monitors which measure the degree a tree bends according to wind strength. Bruno attaches the same type of monitor to other trees which are not restrained and react freely.
These experiments revealed that trees, when bent by the wind, will make twice the amount of wood. They'll grow twice as much in diameter, and surprisingly, they would reply more to strong and unusual gusts of wind. And for that, they must have some kind of memory to be able to compare what is normal from what is not.
Distinguishing unusual, dangerous winds from ordinary, inoffensive winds supposes that trees have an active memory over long periods of time, perhaps even throughout their entire lifespan.
Here we have a good example of a tree that has had an accident. A very strong gust of wind bent it over. It has succeeded in becoming perfectly straight again.
The sharp angle at the base of the tree is a scar made by an exceptional gust of wind the tree suffered. The tree bent, but survived. The cells of the wood fibers that make up the trunk of the tree stretch and retract permanently, like hydraulic cylinders, depending on the strength of the wind. This elasticity allows it to bend without breaking, and once the gust of wind has passed, to recover a vertical position.
From time to time, when it feels bent, it produces wood that reacts more on one side than the other. And when it draws back, it can change direction. This is a trunk which has been bent and laid down by a storm. It felt it and produced a special wood which enabled it to stand up again. It's like wood muscle.
The forest of Quincy in Poland is known as the Crooked Forest and carries the mark of a blow of wind that almost destroyed it. Accidents that scar the silhouettes of trees and tell us about their lives. Once fallen, why do trees straighten back up to a vertical position? This irrepressible tendency fascinated scientists. In the 1900s, the botanist Wilhelm Pfeffer was one of the first to create moving pictures of this phenomenon. Do plants straighten up with the sole goal of capturing sunlight more efficiently? Bruno Mulier has designed an experimental lighting chamber with over 90 fluorescent light bulbs shining from all directions.
So here we've bent this plant. Now we're going to test if it uses other information than light, and for that we created a special array, which is this sphere where light shines from everywhere, similar to the sun but coming from all around. And so there is no up or down, and we'll observe just what happens.
Under uniform lighting conditions with no up or down, the plant will straighten up vertically again in a single day. Therefore, it is not light perception which guides the plant upwards, but another sense. Could plants be sensitive to gravity pulling them down? To answer this, we must plunge into the plant cells and observe their reaction when they are affected by a change of direction.
Here, we see what happens at a cellular level, when the plant is bent over. Under the microscope, we can see these special cells here, which are full of small grains of starch. And these grains of starch fall, like an avalanche. And the asymmetry of this pile will tell the plant just how much bent over it really is. The more the pile has fallen, the lower it really is.
The INRAE team pursued its investigation. They wanted to know if the plant could situate itself in space. In other words, in the absence of gravity, if it knew where to find each of its parts, stems, branches, leaves, each in relation to the others. As they cancelled the effect of light direction by making it come from everywhere, Bruno Mulier's team cancelled the effect of gravity and put young plants in rotation in a device called a gravitron. The plants were photographed over several days. The experiment showed that plants can perceive their location in space. Like humans and animals, they also have a sixth sense called proprioception. To perceive the position of your own body in the space around you is vital for organisms that grow in an ever-changing environment. Unlike humans, plants are faced simultaneously by two different environments, one part above ground and another below, roots, also facing ever-changing surroundings. Roots endlessly explore the underground. Each one is a searching head that tracks water and nutriments vital for its growth. The neurobiologists František Paluska and Stefano Mancuso are interested in the end of roots called the apex.
All the root apices, they are coordinated in their activities and growths, and they resemble some swarms, for example, insect swarms or birds. Somehow there is some communication. We still don't understand how it is going on, but they are coordinated and behave as one swarm.
Each plant root is like one unit, like a swallow, an ant or a termite within its community. Information collected by the apex is treated by all the cells of the roots and body of the plant, the whole of which makes up a collective intelligence that points out tasks to accomplish and coordinates action.
There is no central organizer, and that's why these networks are not vulnerable to some stress situations. These networks can self-organize very effectively, and they can survive any bad stress situation. The network resembles very closely the internet network, so one could call it root wide web.
The networks are all connected, and according to the information collected by the multiple apex, the root filaments change direction, accelerate, slow down, or branch out. However, if the end of the root, the apex, is cut off, the root does not change direction. The upper root, which has had its point amputated, grows straight, while the lower, with its apex complete, moves around, constantly seeking information. Strong electric activity takes place in the apex and is the part of the plant which uses the most oxygen.
This is the same kind of signal we can record in the animal brain.
Really, these networks are also used to exchange information, not just to provide water or nutrition. We have still no idea how complex the communication there is.
All over the planet, where plants grow, roots weave infinite underground networks. These root networks multiply their expansion by uniting with another underground network, just as tentacular, filaments of fungi. Roots and filaments grow in symbiosis and form what is called the mycorrhiza. In a forest, fungi play a linking and relay role between the trees, increasing by 10,000 times the extent and original capacities of both root networks. The mycorrhiza is a network of intense interaction. It exchanges information and also rare mineral elements and sugars produced by the trees. In this forest near Jerusalem, Israel, pine, oak, cypress, carob, and pistacia trees all grow together. The Weizmann Institute is at the forefront of research on mycorrhizae networks.
On the roots of this big pine tree behind us, we see the mycorrhiza growing all over the root, transporting materials from the root of this tree to the next tree, and on and on.
With a camera that scans the underground, researchers map the mycorrhiza networks.
Wow, look at these roots. And it seems like they're full of mycorrhiza.
Wow, it's amazing. Maybe it connects to the younger pine.
The underground maps laid out by the Weizmann Institute team show that the trees share carbon, and therefore sugar, with neighbors of the same species, but also with other species of tree.
We showed that up to 40% of the biomass in the fine root of this pine tree can actually come from carbon exported from an oak tree nearby through this mycorrhiza connection. We know that both control the association. For example, a tree can stop giving carbon to a fungi that is not providing water or nutrients. And the fungi themselves, they are very flexible and agile. They can leave a tree and reconnect to another side of a tree where they get the carbon from.
The scientists measure the level of carbon in the tree roots and in the mycorrhiza fungal networks. They also measure the level of carbon in leaves with a device that captures their photosynthesis data. Back in the laboratory, a new generation of sequencing techniques quantifies the carbon in the measures.
Using the carbon measurement, we discovered that the carbon can move from leaves to roots in a tree within 3 days, and it takes another 6 days to move from roots of one tree over 5 meters to the roots of another tree through the mycorrhiza hyphae.
Are the mycorrhiza capable of feeding the trees in extreme climatic conditions? To find out, pine trees have been covered by black bags to prevent them from photosynthesizing.
Wow, look at this poor plant. It died because it was not connected. It was separated from the middle plant here. But this one survived the shading because it was connected and got carbon from the middle pine to this pine.
The Israelis are worried for their forests. They have set up a drainage system that limits rainwater in the soil. It will take them 5 years to know the effects on the mycorrhiza network.
In agriculture, you can breed specific mycorrhiza and apply it to your fields in big scale. But in forests, it is actually impossible. We have to learn what the nature does. We have to think about the diversity. The more tree species that we plant, the more mycorrhiza species that will be there below ground and will make more intricate, more complex networks that will make the forest more resilient and more sustainable.
Science is still far from having made an exhaustive inventory of the senses of plants and their resources. Future discoveries will no doubt bring many new surprises. The more we learn about plants, the more they amaze us, the more we admire, love, and respect them. The Swiss Federal Ethics Committee on Non-Human Biotechnology considers that plants, like animals, have dignity and a moral value.
If tomorrow the humans would disappear from the planet in a few centuries, plants would take control of everything, and every single trace of the human civilization would be hidden by plant. But if tomorrow the plants would start to disappear from the planet, in few weeks probably, at least all the terrestrial life would disappear, transforming the planet in a desert.
The latest discoveries humbly teach us that the frontiers between the human world, the animal world, and the plant world are evidently not as strong as we once thought. Today, there is an immense change in the way we look at the living world around us. To see it as it is, and not as we would like it to be, implies a revolution in thinking that brings great hope.